In this video, we explore one of the most precise and methodical forms of punishment used during the reign of King Roderic II. We will examine the device designed to enforce law through controlled pain and uncover how it was applied within the kingdom's judicial system. From the king's rise to his administrative methods and the detailed procedures behind this punishment, we'll reveal the structure and oversight that made it a central part of governance. Guys, can you help me to hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel? And it's my dream. Sorry for interruption. It's humble request. Let's jump into the video. King Roderic II emerged during a period marked by regional fragmentation and power disputes among minor nobles. His ascent was supported by a coalition of merchants who sought stronger central authority to stabilize trade routes. His early policies indicated a preference for structured governance rooted in administrative clarity. Roderic was born into a mid-ranking noble house that lacked significant military influence. His education emphasized diplomacy, historical study, and record-keeping, which shaped his administrative decisions later. He became known for his consistent work ethic and attention to procedural accuracy. His rise accelerated when neighboring lords entered prolonged disputes that weakened their alliances. Roderic positioned himself as a mediator who could reduce conflict and consolidate authority. His reputation for orderly decision-making gained acceptance among local councils. Once crowned, Roderic prioritized establishing a centralized bureaucratic structure. He reorganized tax collection through appointed officials trained under standardized guidelines. This system produced predictable revenue and reduced irregular levies imposed by regional authorities. He implemented the Codex Rodericus, a unified legal framework intended to align regional practices with central judicial norms. The Codex categorized offenses and penalties with specific instructions for judges. This documentation became the foundation for legal uniformity across his territories. Roderic expanded administrative councils to include scribes, auditors, and advisors who produced detailed reports. He insisted that every decision be recorded, reviewed, and archived. This system strengthened his oversight capacity and reinforced hierarchical discipline. His governance style emphasized order, predictability, and strict adherence to protocol. He required regular evaluations of regional governors and district supervisors. These officials were judged on measurable criteria such as tax compliance, militia readiness, and public infrastructure maintenance. Roderic's control over trade routes increased after he secured access to river crossings and market towns. He established fixed tariffs to replace the inconsistent fees previously demanded by scattered authorities. Merchants benefited from reduced uncertainties and began supporting his expansion policies. He developed a standardized census that cataloged households, livestock, and land holdings. This census allowed more accurate resource planning and improved allocation of labor for agricultural and construction projects. It also reinforced state oversight on population distribution. Roderic invested heavily in road maintenance and the construction of new administrative outposts. These structures served as regional hubs for record storage, judicial hearings, and tax collection. They also increased the visibility of central authority across distant settlements. The king viewed education as a tool of governance rather than cultural enrichment. He established training halls for scribes where curriculum focused on arithmetic, copying accuracy, and procedural regulations. Graduates became the backbone of his administrative apparatus. Roderic maintained a structured relationship with the military. He promoted officers based on service records rather than lineage. He also introduced standardized equipment requisition forms to track supply distribution. These reforms reduced shortages and improved troop efficiency. His foreign policy was characterized by cautious negotiation. He signed trade pacts that benefited his markets and avoided conflicts that could disrupt internal consolidation. Neighboring states regarded him as predictable, which reduced interstate tension. Despite his administrative focus, Roderic demanded unquestioned obedience from his subordinates. He believed that order depended on the consistent application of rules without exceptions. His councils preserved extensive documentation of his directives to ensure compliance. Roderic's court operated under strict schedules, from deliberation hours to report submissions. Every visitor, including nobles, merchants, and scholars, followed a prescribed sequence of steps before obtaining audience permission. These procedures reinforced his emphasis on orderly operations. He restructured agricultural production by regulating grain storage, setting quotas, and assigning inspectors to monitor supply levels. These inspectors submitted monthly inventories to central archives. This system aimed to prevent shortages and reduce price volatility. Roderick also introduced a tiered tax system based on land type and productivity classification. The classifications were determined through surveying teams trained in measurement and evaluation. This approach improved the accuracy of tax assessment. To support infrastructure expansion, he formed construction regiments composed of laborers, engineers, and overseers. These regiments followed standardized blueprints for roads, fortifications, and administrative halls. This uniformity ensured consistent quality across regions. Roderick viewed religion as an institution that needed alignment with state objectives. He required religious leaders to register with the central administration and submit annual reports on temple inventories. This rule aimed at oversight rather than interference in doctrine. The king promoted a culture of written communication. Verbal orders were discouraged unless followed by written confirmation. This habit reduced misinterpretation and increased bureaucratic accountability. The archives accumulated extensive volumes during his reign. Roderick established annual review assemblies where governors presented performance evaluations. These assemblies served as a forum for administrative comparison. Officials whose regions met benchmarks gained recognition, while those who failed faced reassignment. His reign also emphasized economic diversification. He encouraged salt mining, textile production, and ironworking by granting standardized permits. These industries produced additional revenue streams that strengthened state finances. Roderick maintained a stable relationship with the merchant class by providing fixed regulations on transport tariffs and storage fees. Merchants, in return, supported state construction projects by supplying materials and logistical assistance. This mutual dependence increased his political stability. The king implemented a meticulous communication network using mounted messengers who followed preset routes and schedules. Messages carried encoded seals that verified authenticity. This system accelerated coordination across distant districts. His administrative focus extended to public order management. He created town watch units supervised by district officers who submitted structured incident reports. These reports helped track trends in theft, disputes, and unauthorized gatherings. Roderick developed a classification system for settlement growth. Villages were categorized based on population, trade activity, and agricultural productivity. These classifications determined funding priorities and administrative attention. The king used census data to plan food reserves in case of harvest disruptions. Grain silos were built in strategic locations, managed by overseers who followed specific storage guidelines. This practice increased resilience during fluctuating seasons. He maintained a high level of oversight over diplomatic visits. Foreign envoys followed detailed protocols specifying lodging arrangements, conduct expectations, and gift exchanges. These guidelines created predictability and prevented diplomatic incidents. Roderick's administrative reforms produced a state characterized by strict order and centralized record-keeping. His governance reflected a preference for systematization rather than flexibility. Subordinates understood that deviation from established regulations was not tolerated. The king's leadership shaped a structured society where documentation guided decision-making at every level. His emphasis on controlled processes formed the ideological basis for his authority. By the peak of his reign, central governance became more uniform than in previous eras. He valued efficiency above sentiment, which influenced his policies, appointments, and disciplinary measures. His officials recognized that precision was essential for career stability. This mindset permeated the administrative culture of the realm. Roderick's reign marked a transition from loosely connected territories to a centrally managed kingdom. Roads, census records, tax logs, and legal codes testified to the scope of his organizational reforms. These reforms prepared the environment for later developments under his rule. Under King Roderick II, the judicial apparatus expanded alongside administrative reforms. Penalties for violations were standardized through the Codex Rodericus, which categorized offenses by severity. This categorization created a framework that determined when corporal punishment was authorized. The king viewed punishment as a regulatory tool meant to preserve order through consistency. His councils documented procedures with precision to prevent arbitrary decisions. Enforcement rested on appointed officials who were trained to follow specific guidelines. Implementation of these regulations required dedicated facilities. Roderick commissioned the construction of correction halls near administrative outposts. These halls contained record rooms, holding chambers, and designated spaces for corporal disciplinary measures. The salted whip table was among the methods approved for crimes classified under aggravated defiance or repeated violations of state directives. The table itself was a flat wooden structure fitted with adjustable restraints. Its purpose was to immobilize the subject during the procedure. The process took place under the oversight of a punishment officer who followed written instructions. These instructions outlined the sequence, materials, and documentation requirements. Observers included scribes who recorded times, actions, and the condition of the subject. The salted whip table procedure began with securing the arms and legs using leather straps. Officers were trained to ensure equal tension on each strap to prevent irregular injuries. Once secured, the subject was prepared for the initial stage of whipping. The whip used for this method was a multi-thong leather tool standardized in length and weight. Regulations required the officer to deliver strikes in controlled intervals. Each strike aimed to break the surface layer of skin without causing deeper tissue destruction. After the required number of strikes, the second phase involved applying salt, vinegar, or brine to the open wounds. These materials were placed in sealed containers stored within the correction hall. Their use was documented to maintain accurate inventory records. Salt was the most commonly used substance due to its availability across the kingdom. It was finely ground to ensure even distribution over the affected areas. Vinegar and brine were applied in cases where the offense category demanded an enhanced level of discomfort. The application process followed a consistent technique. Officers used cloth pads or wooden spatulas to spread the material across the exposed skin. Regulations prohibited excessive force, emphasizing uniform coverage instead. This ensured the method aligned with state guidelines. Scribes documented the subject's reactions as part of the procedural record. These observations were used to evaluate the officer's adherence to the prescribed method. Any deviation from protocol required immediate reporting to supervisory authorities. The purpose of the salted whip table was not execution, but controlled punitive discomfort. Subjects remained restrained until the officer confirmed that all steps had been completed. Afterward, they were released to a holding area for a mandatory observation period. Medical attendants, who served under the Administrative Health Registry, examined the subjects after the procedure. Their reports focused on wound status, bleeding levels, and potential complications. These reports contributed to the broader system of bureaucratic oversight. Offenses that warranted this method included failure to pay standardized taxes after repeated warnings, falsification of state documents, or refusal to comply with administrative inspections. The classification system linked each offense type to specific disciplinary measures. Roderick II insisted that punishments be applied uniformly across the kingdom. Regional governors were evaluated based on their consistency in implementing these measures. Variations in enforcement were grounds for administrative correction. The correction halls maintained detailed ledgers that listed each punishment session. Entries included the subject's name, offense code, attending officers, materials used, and the total duration. These records were archived annually for review by central authorities. Officers responsible for performing the punishment underwent training that included written examinations. Training focused on procedure memorization, material handling, and restraint adjustment. This standardized approach prevented improvisation and maintained uniformity. The salted whip table procedure required periodic inspection of equipment. Administrators assigned carpenters to check for structural integrity, ensuring the tables met safety and durability standards. Whip maintenance was also regulated through scheduled replacements. Public access to punishment events was limited. Roderick regarded punishment as an administrative task rather than public spectacle. Only authorized personnel were allowed to observe procedures unless the offense category called for a controlled viewing by local representatives. The king emphasized documentation to maintain transparency within the administrative hierarchy. Reports from scribes were reviewed by audit officers who checked for accuracy. These layers of oversight reinforced institutional discipline. Roderick believed that strict adherence to documented procedures established a stable legal order. He argued that predictable punishment discouraged deviance and increased respect for administrative authority. His councils echoed these views in official proclamations. The salted whip table represented a structured approach to physical punishment. Its design and application reflected the broader philosophy of his reign. Every component, from materials to record-keeping, fit into the system of measurable governance. The role of the medical attendants was not to provide comfort, but to ensure subjects remained capable of completing assigned labor or fines after recovery. Their work was documented in health logs that contributed to long-term administrative planning. In some correction halls, regional variations existed in room layout, but the core method remained consistent. Central inspectors conducted unannounced visits to verify compliance. Infractions by officers resulted in reassignment or formal reprimand. Subjects who underwent the procedure were sometimes required to attend administrative hearings afterward. These hearings evaluated whether they fulfilled restitution obligations or remedial tasks. The process connected punishment with regulatory enforcement. The inventory system for salt, vinegar, and brine required precise record-keeping. Containers were weighed before and after use. These measurements prevented misuse and ensured the materials matched official supply chains. Punishment officers were rotated among regions to avoid personal familiarity with local subjects. This rotation reduced potential bias and maintained impartiality. Roderick's administrative philosophy prioritized neutrality in enforcement actions. The salted whip table procedure rarely resulted in fatality due to controlled application. The King's councils noted that the method achieved deterrence without disrupting the labor force. This made it a practical tool in the administrative system. Subjects who recovered returned to regular activities according to regional labor plans. Their names were flagged in administrative files, and future offenses resulted in escalated penalties. These flags were reviewed during annual audit cycles. The method reinforced Roderick's broader objective of cultivating a disciplined society. In his view, regulation required visible consequences for noncompliance. The salted whip table became a symbolic representation of this philosophy within state institutions. Correction hall personnel followed strict schedules based on administrative timetables. Punishments, inspections, and reports were organized to align with daily operational plans. This organization maintained efficiency across the system. The king rarely visited punishment facilities personally. Instead, he relied on detailed reports prepared by supervisory officers. These reports included statistics on offense frequency, punishment usage, and resource consumption. The salted whip table, while severe, was framed by the administration as a legal mechanism rather than an emotional response to wrongdoing. Its presence in the judicial system aligned with the king's insistence on uniformity in state operations. Through this method and others listed in the Codex, Roderick sought to align behavior with state expectations. Punishment served as a regulatory reinforcement within a broader network of administrative control. The system reflected his preference for structured governance. By the later years of King Roderick II's reign, administrative reviews highlighted measurable effects produced by the disciplinary system. Reports compiled from regional correction halls showed reductions in repeated offenses related to tax irregularities and document falsification. These findings were presented during annual assemblies. Audit committees noted that uniform enforcement of the salted whip table contributed to predictable governance patterns. Officials emphasized that punishment was applied according to standardized categories rather than personal interpretation. This consistency formed a key element of Roderick's administrative identity. Scribes observed that documentation from punishment sessions improved accuracy in long-term legal records. Cross-referencing practices helped identify behavioral trends across districts. This information influenced future policy adjustments in taxation oversight and local inspections. Medical attendants continued to file structured health assessments of subjects after procedures. These assessments became part of broader administrative health statistics. The data allowed planners to estimate recovery periods for labor assignments and agricultural tasks. Governors submitted quarterly reports noting that the presence of standardized punishment facilities reduced local disputes between officials and subjects. The reliance on written guidelines limited personal negotiation and reinforced institutional authority. This reinforced the administrative hierarchy endorsed by the king. As Roderick aged, councils began reassessing the balance between regulation and public perception. Some advisors argued that extensive reliance on corporal measures could affect regional morale. Others maintained that the system's consistency supported stable governance without ambiguity. Inspection officers conducted additional compliance reviews to verify that procedures continued to meet codex requirements. Their reports indicated that most regions adhered closely to the prescribed methods. Instances of deviation were addressed through corrective training. The salted whip table maintained its status as a regulated disciplinary tool within the judicial network. Its continued use illustrated the central administration's commitment to procedural order. By the end of Roderick's reign, documentation surrounding its application became a distinct component of the kingdom's administrative record.